worship the King, all glorious above, and gratefully sing His wonderful love, our shield and defender.
So our series is entitled Christianity or Absurdity. As you'll see, brethren, as we go through these 4 lessons, the first tonight and lesson 2, 3 and 4 tomorrow, you'll see exactly what we mean by that. There really is only 2 options. Either Christianity, the Christian worldview, or absurdity. That's what one is reduced to if he or she rejects the Christian worldview. And the subtitle is a presuppositional defence of the faith. And that word presuppositional is a little bit of a lengthy word, but don't be concerned by that. Or another way to put it, brethren, is this. This is simply a worldview apologetic. It's an apologetic that deals with the unbeliever's worldview. And again, we'll see that as we go. One reason, brethren, that this is so important, this apologetic, it's not only just nice to hear and enjoyable to hopefully listen to and learn, but also it's very needed. And especially in our beloved country, New Zealand. New Zealand, as you know, is a very secular country. I love New Zealand, born and raised in New Zealand. But I'm not oblivious or I'm not biased to the fact that we definitely have a problem here in this country, and that is the secularism that we have. We have universities and we have the media saying and doing things that are unbelievable. And I am concerned about as a church, we're to prepare our young ones, especially, aren't we? We think about our young adults who go off to university and they sit at the feet of a professor who really should know what he's talking about. And it's not surprising that our young men and women walk away from their professors thinking and believing what they're taught. And they should be able to believe what they're taught. But young people go through university today and they come out saying such silly things such as there is no truth. There is no truth. And as you'll see, that's a self-refuting position. But this is what our young people are being taught. It's a real problem. This type of idea of it. This is what is being taught today in this country. And so it's a real need, this apologetic. And you'll see just how effective it is. A very effective one. Tonight's lesson is entitled The Nature of the Debate. And what I mean by that is, come time for us to converse with the unbeliever, what's going on? What's the nature of the debate? What is he thinking? What are you thinking? Why is he not being convinced by what I'm saying? Why is he getting frustrated with me and I'm getting frustrated with him? What's the nature of the debate? What's going on in that dialogue? And tonight, brethren, we have 4 important points to make that really set the scene, that really explain what's going on come time for us to converse with the unbeliever. As Christians, we understand that we have the responsibility to defend the Christian faith. It's an expectation that our God has of us to defend the Christian faith. We think of 1 Peter 3, verse 15, where we learn that we are to always be ready to give a defence to everyone who asks us for a reason for the hope that is in us. We think of some of the key words that Peter used in that verse. We are to always be ready. Not just sometimes or not just come time for us to prepare, but we're to always be ready. And we're to give a defence to everyone from the janitor to the university professor, were to give a defence to everyone. Two sort of important, at least two important ideas that Peter touches on there in that verse. Now 1 Peter 3 verse 15 is not a command just for academics, is it? Not just for those who are scholars among us. It's not a command just for the church leadership, for the eldership, or for the men. Nor is it a command just for the preacher or the evangelist. Nor is it a command just for the members either. Rather, this command is for every Christian, from the eldership down. We all have the responsibility to defend the faith and defend it well. That's what God expects of all of us. So how do we go about this? Well, this worldview approach, brethren, is not the way to do it. I think it's a very powerful way, but it's one of several ways. But again, you'll see hopefully how powerful this is and how needed this approach is. Okay, the first point I'd like to make, and I cannot stress this point enough, especially in this apologetic, is this. We have excellent evidence for the Christian faith. Excellent evidence, and I know that I don't need to convince any one of you of that. We have excellent evidence for the existence of God, for the historicity of Jesus, and for the inspiration of the Bible. Powerful, convincing evidence. And we think of, for example, the evidence for the existence of God. We would say as Christians that scientific evidence confirms to us the fact that God exists and that God created the heavens and the earth several thousand years ago, exactly as Moses records for us in the book of Genesis. In fact, we would say as Christians that man is simply without excuse regarding God's existence. There is no good excuse, no excuse that works to deny the fact that God exists. There is more than enough evidence to establish the fact that God exists. The unbeliever is simply without excuse. We think of important passages such as Psalm 19 and verse 1, where we read, the psalmist says, "The heavens declare the glory of God, and the firmament shows his handiwork." It's obvious by looking around us that there is a creator, an all-powerful creator. It's obvious. We think of Romans 1 and verse 20, where Paul writes, "For since the creation of the world, his invisible attributes are clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made, even his eternal power and Godhead, so that they," the Gentile word specifically, but people in general, "are without excuse." Without excuse. So the Bible is very clear that man is without excuse when it comes to the existence of God. And what the Bible says lines up beautifully with what we observe around us. We think of scientific evidence. Now, some of the many scientific evidences we have for the existence of God include, I have 3 examples tonight, and these are just 3 of many examples that you and I could go to establish the fact that God exists. We think of one important area, and that is the area of information science. Information science. That area deals with information and DNA in the human body, the incredible amount of information that DNA holds. And this has led many scientists to believe in an information giver as being the only reasonable explanation for the information we have in the human body. In fact, Dr. Warner Gitt, he is one of the world's experts, leading experts on information science. And he says this regarding this area. He says, "There is no known law of nature no known process, and no known sequence of events which can cause information to originate by itself in matter. His point is it just simply doesn't come to be from matter. We've never observed that. Never have we observed by means of the scientific method or information just arising like this. No, he says this: when its process along the chain of transmission is traced backward, every piece of information leads to a mental source, the mind of the sender. And that makes sense, doesn't it? When we pick up a book and we read the sentences and the paragraphs, that's information. And that information always goes back to a mind, to an author, doesn't it? And it's the same on the cellular level. When it comes to DNA, the information goes back, obviously, to a mind of some sort. Dr. Cammock, one of the leading experts in information science, and he's regarded as such both inside and outside of Christendom, so to speak. Another example area or scientific evidence that we can present to the unbeliever has to do with irreducible complexity. And irreducible complexity is basically the idea that we have these machines, essentially, these machines that are inside of us at a cellular level that are responsible for running everything. These incredible machines. And these machines are responsible for a number of different roles within us. And one of the examples that is given is the example of the mousetrap. You think of the mousetrap consists of a wooden board-based board. It has an arm to it, it has a spring, it has that sort of horseshoe or that three-fourths of the triangle to it. And now you think of, if you were to remove one part of that mousetrap, would it work? Would it? If you were just to remove the spring, that mousetrap would no longer work. If you were to remove the baseboard, it would no longer work. If you were to remove the arm, again, it would no longer work. And this is the idea of irreducible complexity. These machines are so complex that if we were to remove one part of these machines, they wouldn't exist. They just wouldn't be there. And he says this, Dr. Michael Behe. Now, Dr. Michael Behe is a professor of biochemistry at Lehigh University. Again, he's recognised worldwide as one of the leading experts in this field of irreducible complexity. He says this, he says evolution can't produce an irreducibly complex biological machine suddenly, all at once. Why? Because it's much too complicated. The odds against that would be prohibitive. You can't produce it directly by numerous, successive, slight modifications on a precursory system. Why? Because any precursory system would be missing a part, and consequently that couldn't function. There'd be no reason for it to exist, and natural selection chooses systems that are already working. So evolution has us believe that things over time came to be what they are today. But Michael Behe says that can't be the case with these machines we have in our bodies. If there was ever a time that one of these parts were not in place, they'd never develop to the point they are today. We wouldn't have them. We wouldn't have the human body as we know it. Again, one of the leading fields, one of the leading scientists today in the world. A third area that we could point to, brethren, as far as the scientific evidence for the existence of God, is in the area of what's known as the fine-tuning argument. And this argument basically says that the universe is so fine-tuned that it's really ridiculous to not recognise that that's been done on purpose. We think of things like the ratio or the basic systems such as the oxygen and CO2 system. Of course, we need oxygen, but of course we also need plant life to take in and to put out oxygen for us. We think of the arrangement of planets, we think of the distance between the planets, we think of ocean currents and the moon and all these different examples, how any closer to the sun or so much closer will burn up, so further away will freeze, the same will go to the moon. All these amazing things in our world that, again, the argument of fine-tuning, things seem to be tuned just right for life to exist. And a man who's a leader in this area is Professor Robin Collins. And Robin Collins is a professor of philosophy with degrees in both physics and mathematics. So these men these men don't hold bachelors. These men are some of the leading men in these areas. And he says this: over the past 30 years or so, scientists have discovered that just about everything about the basic structure of the universe is balanced on a razor edge for life to exist. The coincidences are far too fantastic to attribute this to mere chance or to claim that it needs no explanation. The dials are set too precisely to have been a random accident. Professor Robin Collins. And so my point, brethren, is this: we have excellent scientific evidence for the Christian faith. And we can go to the evidence of information science, we can go to the area of irreducible complexity, we can go to the area of the fine-tuning argument. And there are many more areas that we could go to convince the unbeliever that there really is a God. It's the only reasonable explanation for what we have today. We have evidence for God's existence in every possible field of science. Okay, but why, brethren? Why, even though there's so much evidence for God's existence, and even though it's so compelling and powerful, why do people still refuse to accept the gospel, accept the fact that God exists, and so on? Well, there are a number of reasons, but why is it such a struggle? You would think anyone who is honest would be honest with the evidence and follow it. What do we do with an unbeliever who is unwilling to be honest with this evidence? Because it's not hard to find someone who you present this evidence, and again, as convincing as it is, they just will not accept it. They will not be honest with this evidence. Well, one very important thing to remember, brother, is this, and this is our second point for tonight, and this really helps us to understand what's going on. And that is this: a person interprets the evidence according to his worldview. One looks at the evidence and he makes sense of the evidence in light of his worldview. Okay, so let's define some terms here. What exactly is a worldview? Well, Oxford Dictionaries defines a worldview as a particular philosophy of life or conception of the world. I like the way that Dr. Greg Bonson, he was an apologist and a philosopher. He's no longer, he's passed away, but he was a great apologist in this worldview apologetic. He says this: a worldview is a network of presuppositions which are not tested by natural science, and in terms of which all experience is related and interpreted. And again, we'll look at this word presuppositions here in a minute. So what is a worldview? Our worldview, at least on a basic level, our worldview contains our most strongly held convictions about everything. We think of things such as the nature of reality, origins, where do we come from, things such as our standard for right and for wrong, who God is, what man is, how do we attain knowledge, and how we should live. This is our worldview, and our worldview contains all these things, and we see everything through, we make sense of everything through our worldview. What then is a presupposition? Well, Oxford Dictionaries defines a presupposition as a thing assumed beforehand at the beginning of a line of argument or course of action. A presupposition, brethren, is simply a pre-belief. That's all it is. It's a belief that we bring to the table. Before we even start examining or considering the evidence, these are beliefs that we take for granted. Beliefs that we, again, things that we believe in, that are givens, and we bring these beliefs to the table, to the conversation. These are presuppositions, our pre-beliefs. Some of our presuppositions as Christians are that God exists. That's a presupposition. The fact that the Bible is His Word. The fact that there is an absolute moral standard of right and wrong. The fact that there are laws of logic. The fact that there is uniformity in nature. These are some of our presuppositions, our pre-beliefs that you and I, again, bring to the discussion before we even say the first word. Our pre-beliefs. Okay, let's ask this question. How is it, brethren, and you might have thought about this, and might have thought about this more than once, how is it that a scientist who believes in evolution and a scientist who believes in the Bible's account of creation can work shoulder to shoulder in the same lab, examine the exact same evidence, and walk away with two completely different conclusions? How is that the case? I remember when I went to Palmerston North Boys High, I was there. I don't think they have the forms anymore, the years I think they have now, but I was there third form through seventh form, and I think in my fifth form, I had over the course of those 5 years, I had two scientists who worked at the same school, who worked even side by side in the same lab. Two scientists. Now, one of my teachers, one of those scientists was an evolutionist, the other was a creationist. He very much believed in the Bible's account of creation. Now that was puzzling. How can these two men be just as knowledgeable in this area, yet have two completely different conclusions? Why is that the case? Well, it's because of our point, brethren. It's because they have two different worldviews through which they interpret the evidence. That's why a scientist can pick up, or an archaeologist can pick up a fossil, and he can say, aha, millions of years. Another archaeologist, who is a creationist, can pick up that same fossil and say, no, I don't think so, thousands of years. They're dealing with the exact same thing, fact, so to speak, material, yet walking away with two different conclusions. Why? Because they have two different worldviews, and they allow these worldviews to interpret the evidence. So Christians and unbelievers have two completely different worldviews, and so interpret the same evidence differently. Now, so in some cases, evidence by itself will not cause the unbeliever to reconsider his worldview, as he will simply attempt to interpret the evidence to fit his worldview. So you may present these fields, brethren, the field of information science, irreducible complexity, and the fact that life's on a razor edge. You can present those, but the unbelievers will look at that evidence, and he's going to understand it in light of his worldview. Now, I would argue as a Christian, he has to really fudge it. He has to really push it. I don't think those lines of evidence do fit his worldview. I think they're at odds with his worldview. But nonetheless, she's going to try and make it work. And he's going to find excuses when it doesn't work. But that's what's going on. That's why, how can evidence be so convincing, and yet the unbeliever doesn't see it? Because he has a different worldview through which he understands the evidence. A person's worldview tells him what to make of evidence. You think you liken, a good way to liken a worldview is to a pair of glasses. You and I have creation glasses on. So we put our glasses on and we look around the world and we think, okay, now things make sense in light of God's Word. And evolution has another pair of glasses on, and he looks around the same world and he sees evolution. He sees millions or billions of years. Now, I would argue that he has the wrong pair of glasses on, But we're able to show that he really does have that wrong pair of glasses on. But that's what's happening, brethren. Worldviews tell us what to make of the evidence. Okay. And so I have a neat story, or hopefully a story that will help make the point. We think of a story of a doctor and his patient, and Dr. Jason Lyle, who is an astrophysicist, he uses the story, and I think it makes the point well. There was a man who was convinced that he was dead, absolutely convinced he was dead, day in, day out. No matter what his wife told him, he was sure that he was dead. And so the wife thought to herself, well, what can I do to make my husband believe that he's alive, that he's not dead? I need him. Well, she thought, you know what I'll do? I'll take him to the doctor. Surely the doctor will convince my husband that he is alive. So they go to the doctor. She makes an appointment early on in the week, and hops the car, takes her husband to the doctor, sits with the doctor, and he says, what's the problem? And she says, well, my husband believes that he's dead. Can you please convince him that he's not? I've tried and it hasn't worked so far. And the doctor thought to himself, it's going to be easy. He turned to the man and he said, right, you can't be dead, sir, because you're walking and talking. Now, dead men do not walk and talk, do they? So surely you're alive. The man said, yes, but people can have muscle spasms even after clinical death. That could explain why I'm able to walk and talk. The doctor was taken back a little bit by this, thinking that surely there was enough to convince the man that he was alive. The doctor just thought for a minute. He said, okay, he said, but I have medical charts which show that you are perfectly healthy. So surely that's enough to convince you. The man looked at those charts. He said, yes, but who knows if you're interpreting those charts properly? And maybe those charts are not even mine. I mean, things do happen in hospitals where charts and paperwork get swapped out. Those charts may not even be mine. The doctor was getting frustrated, because you would think that'd be more than enough to convince the man that he was alive. So the doctor thought to himself, he thought, you know what, I've got it. He said, I'm going to prove to you once and for all that you're not dead. Then he said this. He looked at the man and he said, do dead men bleed? The man thought to himself, and he thought, well, no, surely dead men don't bleed. Of course, when you pass away, the heart stops pumping blood. No. So he said to the doctor, no, dead men do not bleed. I understand that. So the doctor takes a pin and pricks the man in the hand, and blood comes rushing to the surface. The doctor says, see, you're bleeding. To which the man responds, well, how about that? I guess dead men do bleed. Isn't that amazing? Question, did the doctor have evidence for his position? Absolutely. He pointed out that he was walking and talking. He pointed out that he had medical charts showing that he was very much alive and well. He even took a pin and pricked the man. Blood came to the surface. He had more than enough evidence to convince this man that he was alive. But the question is this, was the man convinced by the evidence? No. No, he was not convinced. Why? Because he had the presupposition. He had the pre-belief that he was dead. And that presupposition told him how to interpret the evidence. He went into that doctor's appointment with the pre-belief that he was dead. And so all of the evidence that doctor showed him, he understood in light of his worldview, and understood in light of his presupposition. And he simply interpreted it to fit his worldview. Now, I know that's very unreasonable, right? And that's what the evolutionist does. Very, very unreasonable. He has to go to that extreme to excuse the evidence. But that's, I think, a very good illustration to show what's going on. No matter how convincing the evidence is, a person's going to understand the evidence in light of his worldview. Side 10 Brudingate is, he's an apologist, and he's one of the more well-known apologists in this apologetic. He does very well at it. He says this. He says, see, we all get the same evidence, but we examine the evidence according to the beliefs we take to the evidence. Our pre-beliefs, you will, our presuppositions. Dr. Jason Lyle, again, he's an astrophysicist and he's a creationist. And he explains, again, the same thing happens in his field of work. And he gives the example of comets. Now, he says this, that comets are made up of ice and dirt. And they're a powerful proof for the Bible's account of creation. The fact that the universe or the solar system is not millions or billions of years old, that it's thousands of years old. And he says this, he says, comets are made up of ice and dirt. Now, comets orbit the sun, and every time they do so, they lose a little bit of their material. In fact, when the sun blasts away some of the comet's material, a comet's tail is formed. The point is that comets simply do not last billions of years. They simply do not last that long. In fact, Dr. Jason Lyle says that he has observed comets being destroyed in a single pass of the sun. He's seen a comet go on one side and not come out the other side. So the question is this, if the solar system is billions of years old, then why do we still have comets? And that's the question he asks his fellow astrophysicists, his work colleagues, who are evolutionists. How do we possibly have comets if the universe is billions of years old and comets just do not last that long? Now, his evolutionary colleagues understand this. They get the difficulty of this for them, and so they try to explain it. So what they say is this. They say, well, there must be some source of new comets, and they call that an Oort cloud, this Oort cloud. They say maybe there's a reservoir of comets beyond the visible solar system, which every so often dislodges comets and throws them into the solar system. That's why we still have comets today. That's how we can make sense of them in a billion-year-old universe, because there's this machine, comet machine, that puts them out every so often. So again, no matter how convincing that evidence is, you have the evolutionists trying to excuse it. Now he'll ask his evolutionary colleagues, have you ever observed this comet machine? And they'll say, no, well, we haven't yet, but you can't prove that it's not there. And Dr. Lyle will say, well, it is hard to prove what you can't observe. But that's the point, brethren. It's a very good example of scientists trying to make sense of something very convincing in light of their worldview. You see, brethren, it's not a matter of science versus religion. How often have you heard that, brethren? Oh, you believe in religion, well, I believe in science. And the person will say in a very demeaning way, won't they? You believe you have faith? Well, poor you. Poor bit for you. I have science. How often have we heard that? Well, here's the thing, brethren. That's a false dichotomy. That's a false dichotomy. It's a false representation of what's going on. It's not a matter of science versus religion. No, rather it's a matter of one interpretation of the evidence versus another interpretation of the evidence. That's what's going on. Now, while there are scientists who believe in evolution, absolutely, there are also scientists who believe in creation, the Bible's account of creation. If it was science versus religion, why don't they have all the scientists? Because there are scientists who are just as qualified who are not satisfied with the evolutionary model because they see that it doesn't work. We think of even within the Lord's Church, we have men who are scientists, who have PhDs in this area, who do not buy a theory of evolution. We think of, for example, Dr. Brad Herron. He has his PhD in anatomy and neurobiology. Brother Herron is very, very educated. We think of Dr. Jeff Miller. Jeff Miller serves at Apologetics Press, again, PhD in biomechanical engineering. Again, a brilliant man, knows the field of science well. We think of Dr. Brendan May. Again, he also works at Apologetics Press. He is a PhD in astrophysicist. In fact, I think Brother May, he did his PhD work on black holes. Again, Brother May is very, very qualified. He holds a PhD. We think of those who are not members of the Lord's Church, but who to some degree believe in creation. Again, we think of Dr. Michael Behe, PhD in biochemistry. So the point is, brethren, we have scientists who are creationists, who are just as qualified as those who are evolutionists. So it's not a matter of science versus religion, it's a matter of one interpretation of the evidence versus another. Since we interpret the evidence according to our worldview, and since we have different worldviews, how then do we resolve the debate? When you and I come to an unbeliever and we put down evidence after evidence after evidence, and we say creation, 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 they say, oh, I think evolution, evolution, evolution. How do we go about resolving this debate? Now, at this point, it's very tempting to suggest that we should meet on neutral ground. Let's meet somewhere halfway. The idea is we should come together, we should agree on certain rules of interpretation, and then examine the world around us and see which worldview is supported by the evidence. Surely, Mr. Unbeliever, there's things that we agree on. Let's put our differences aside, let's meet somewhere in the middle, and let's examine the evidence. And surely that should lead us to the answer. Well, this is our third of 4 points written this morning. This is such an important point. There is no such thing as neutral ground. No such thing as neutral ground. No such thing as this middle ground between the believer and the unbeliever. Whether we realise it or not, everyone has a worldview. Everyone has a pair of glasses by which they interpret the evidence. There is no escaping it. Now, your worldview consists of things like who is God, what is man, where did I come from, why am I here, where am I going, what's right, what's wrong. Your worldview, the way you look at the world, the way you make sense of the world. Your worldview might have been something you seriously thought through, you put pen to paper, you spent a number of sleepless nights thinking through, something you really thought through, or your worldview simply maybe something you've adopted. My parents believe this way, or my friends believe this way, so I believe this way. But whatever the case may be, we all have a worldview. Now, a person may say, oh, but James, I don't have a worldview. See, I believe that we should come to the evidence and interpret the evidence with no worldview. Well, guess what? That's a worldview on how to interpret the evidence. There's no escaping it. We all have a worldview. It's not wrong to have a worldview. What's wrong is to have the wrong worldview. The reality is that everyone approaches the evidence with some sort of worldview. Now, here's an important point. Having a worldview is unavoidable. Having a rational worldview is not. That's an important distinction. Now, again, Dr. Greg Bonson points out two things when it comes to our conversation with the unbeliever. He says this. He says there are two things to remember when the unbeliever asks you to be neutral, right? How often does this happen? James, you've come to this discussion, let's just leave the Bible out of it. Leave the Bible out of it. Let's just talk on neutral ground. Let's be neutral. Two things, brethren, for you to keep in mind. Number one, they're not. They're not neutral. They're asking you to put your worldview on the shelf, God's Word, but are they putting theirs on the shelf? No way. And we'll see what their worldview is in our next lesson tomorrow morning. But they're not. They're not neutral. Second thing is, you shouldn't be. You shouldn't be neutral either, brethren, because again, a worldview is unavoidable and they are not putting theirs on the shelf. Two things for us to remember when it comes to dialoguing with the unbeliever. Fourth and final point tonight, brethren, just a shorter point, and there's this. How then do we go about if the unbeliever at times is not honest enough with the evidence, how do we go about conversing with him? How do we go about convincing him of God's existence and of the inspiration of the Bible? Well, this is how, brethren, we must deal with the unbeliever's worldview. We must challenge his worldview. We must, again, focus on the foundation. And when we do that, we will really rattle the unbeliever, as you'll see. We must focus on the unbeliever's worldview as opposed to just isolated evidence. What about this? What about that? What about this? Rather than that approach, we can at times focus on the unbeliever's worldview. We must be able to demonstrate why the unbeliever's worldview is not a tenable position and ours is. Now, one thing, brethren, for me to point out is this. This worldview is not necessarily for every unbeliever. In fact, when I sit down and do personal Bible studies, our 5 lessons we have for the church, when I sit down and do that, more often than not, I don't do this approach. Because quite often you're dealing with someone who is genuine, who is honest, who is open, and when you present evidence to them, evidences such as information scientists, even the evidences or arguments such as the law of cause and effect and the law of design, anyone who is somewhat honest is going to be convinced by those evidences. And so, brethren, I quite often don't use this approach. But when I come up against the university student who thinks he knows more, when I come up against someone who's very aggressive or who is really stubborn and wants a challenge, I'll go this route. And again, you'll see brethren just how powerful and how well this route works. And again, especially in New Zealand, with it being so secular, we have more of these people, sadly, by the day, who think this way, who have worldviews, who need to be challenged on the worldview level, as opposed to evidences.
His wonderful love, our shield and defender, the ancient